and disproportionately African American inmates. And I was wondering, like, as president, what your thoughts are on how to reform American prisons?
It's a great question. I actually gave a speech of this yesterday at Howard University. All of us, I don't know any American who doesn't want to be tough on violent crime. But we should also want to be smart on crime. And those two things aren't contradictory. There's actually a good column today in the New York Times by Bob Herbert. He notes that over the last couple of years there's been a spike in violent crime in America. But it turns out that it's spotty. Some cities are doing very well reducing crime. Others are seeing skyrocketing crime. Well, what it turns out is that the places that are reducing crime are also the ones who are sending more cops in before crime happens to find out who's in the community and get to know people and to work with the schools and to work with the churches and the not-for-profit institutions and create a climate of cooperation between the population and the law enforcement. The wrong way to go about it is simply to think that if you just crack down, lock up, don't care about recidivism rates, etc., that somehow you're going to see major improvement. And unfortunately, that's been the approach that we've taken, particularly when it comes to nonviolent drug offenses. Again, I've got 2 kids, so I don't want anybody pushing drugs on them. And we want to take that seriously as a crime. But what we also have to recognize is that if you've got a nonviolent drug offender, particularly if they're kids, effectively kids, even if they're tried as adults, even if they're 18, 19, 20, that the worst thing we can do is to lock them up for a long period of time without any education, if they're functionally illiterate, without any skills or training where they can get a real profession. They're now convicted felons. We release them. Now they're 25, 26. They're out on the streets, can't be hired by anybody. What are they going to do? They're going to go back to dealing drugs. Only now they've probably become more locked into a life of crime because of their stay in a prison. So to the extent that we can look at diversion programs that use drug courts, that treat those who have substance abuse problems, that encourage training and skills and literacy, even while people are being punished for their drug crimes. The more we take that kind of approach, the more effective we are in reducing recidivism rates. That's not going to be perfect. I mean, there are going to be some folks who need to be locked up. And you know, we don't want to be, you know, Pollyannish about it. But the fact is, we now have 2 million people who are locked up. We have by far the largest prison population per capita of any place on earth, with the possible exception of China, maybe formerly the Soviet Union. I mean, they're just, you know, they're just a handful of countries that have this same kind of incarceration rate. No other advanced liberal democracy has this kind of incarceration rate. And the last point I want to make is there does appear to be a racial component to some of the arrest, conviction, prosecution rates when it comes to these offenses. And that's something I think we should take seriously. That's not a black or white issue, that's an American issue. Our basic precept is equality under the law, and we've got to have a president and a Justice Department and a Civil Rights Division that is willing to enforce the law equally. Doesn't matter. If we're going to have drug laws, it shouldn't matter that you're dealing them in public housing versus a suburb out of your mom's backyard. That has to be a basic precept, and that means everybody that is invested in our legal system, everybody feels a part of it, and that means it'll be easier to enforce. Well, listen, you guys have been a terrific group. Let me